The countdown to Election Day, November the 3rd, has begun. We invite you to unite with us in our cause to turn out the vote. Our mission is clear. We must vote. The AME Church never been shy about standing with and for all people. When slavery was the law, we stood for freedom of African people in this country. When segregation was the order of the day, we protest and held meetings to plan protests in our churches. All of us have a moral obligation to stand for justice, freedom, and equality. Our votes are needed more today than ever before. While the battle won yesterday contributes significantly in our efforts to create change and a better way of life in many generations, we must continue in our quest to restore justice and liberty for all Americans. In the words of the late Congressman John Lewis, the right to vote is the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democracy. I risked my life defending that right. I too believe we have responsibility to defend civil liberty. If we are not have the action plan, join with the AME View Alert. The toolkits can be found on www.amed-alert.org. Remember, we are in this together. Let's be the change agent. Get out to vote on Election Day. And I'm John F. White, the Bishop of the 4th Episcopal District of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And I approve this message.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Thomas III. I am the editor of the Christian Recorder, and it is my pleasure to bring you another edition of TCR Dialogues. You know, I rarely come from behind the scenes, so you know we have a special program for you today. Today, we will be having a panel discussion on the groundbreaking documentary Rigged, a documentary that focuses on voter suppression. Before we begin, as always, we invite you to comment and show your church, your district, and whether you voted already in the comments. We are joined today by, first off, Mac Heller, who is the producer of the documentary Rigged, as well as Jackie Dupont-Walker, the Connectional Director of Social Action, and also the V-Alert Initiative, and Reverend Dr. Cassandra Gould. She is a supernumerary preacher in the 5th District, as well as featured in the documentary through her work on Missouri Faith Voices. So we are excited to have you all here today to talk about this important documentary and give a special AME lens to this. You know, we've been doing these dialogues. Now we're dialogue number 18. And we've been trying to get people to understand the importance of voting and making sure they know what they need to do. So with that being said, I want to first begin by talking with just with you, Mr. Heller. What is the inspiration behind the film Rigged, and why has it come out now?
John, we saw what was going on with the widespread attempt to deny some of our fellow American citizens the right to vote, and to do it primarily on the basis of color. And it's just wrong, and it hurts our country, and it's un-American, and it hurts democracy. And there's a bunch of litigation over this, there's a bunch of legal writing on this, but what hadn't been done is telling the stories of those Americans denied the right to vote. So we wanted to make a film that told their stories, that let them speak, that tried to give them back their voice in our democracy, and so that's what we did. And we tell stories of people being improperly cut from the voting rolls, people having other kinds of burdens and barriers that prevent them from voting, people encountering voter intimidation. And we're there with the camera showing you how it happens. The other thing that we ended up doing, which we hadn't planned on initially, was gaining unexpected access to the other side, to the people who allege that our elections are riddled with widespread fraud and that much stricter voting laws are necessary to combat that fraud. So what we do in the film is they tell us there's fraud, and we say, oh, really? Well, could you please show us this fraud? And we'll have the camera rolling. And I'll just suggest people look at it in the film because they don't find anything. But the scary thing is that having not found anything, that doesn't lead them to say, well, I guess I was wrong. I guess that fraud's not out there. Instead, what they say is, well, that just proves that it's even bigger than we imagined, that the perpetrators of this fraud are even more devious than we could have understood. And so it makes your head hurt for the illogic of it, and it makes your heart hurt for the state of our democracy. So we need to defend it, and this film gives you the path.
You know, I first saw the rigged film when I was looking at when I was participating in the Southern California Lay Conference, the Lay Annual Lay Day, and I was struck with the flaw. Ms. Dupont-Walker and Reverend Gould, you all are on the front lines right now voting and voter protection. How is this film being used for voter mobilization and protection? How are you all using this? How is this being helpful as a resource?
Let me say thank you first for being here today and for the excellent work you're doing with this dialogue. There is nothing more important than people seeing what their fears are and knowing that it's not just them. And so what we've been doing is pushing this out everywhere we can. It is a link. We're encouraging people to have it at home to discuss it. We're encouraging churches to have it as the called bonus information on Sundays. And when they gather, we're urging them during the voter education sessions to have it there and just to make sure that everyone sees it. We've put it in our daily voter countdowns to encourage anyone who receives those daily voter countdowns to take this action and show. You know, sometimes when you're talking about how things are going wrong, people kind of think your conspiracy theory is not real. This makes it real. And we're hearing from people in North Carolina. We showed it for a session in Texas, and they went, oh my God, Edwards County is right there. They could see it. They knew that sheriff. They knew that issue. It also, we find out, is a way for them to empower themselves to go the extra mile. So some people have said, after seeing rigs, they now understand the statement we make that this is the most consequential election in our lifetime. It is indeed. And then when you understand when this scheme was put in place and how well it has been working, because we've seen the things that have happened to the state houses and the legislatures. So this actually brings some truth to it. And I'll just say, Mac, that a part of what we have to do then as AMEs is convert those people who think that they haven't seen what they've seen. So you've given us the impetus to keep on going to reverse this and to look for that democracy playbook.
So Dr. Gould, in your advocacy, how has this film helped you and shape what you're doing right now in Missouri?
Yeah, so in Missouri, we've been living this film, obviously. And so it has provided, as Sister Jackie said, the empirical evidence. I was real good in science in school, and I'm always looking for evidence. I don't like to talk about feelings. I like to talk about facts. And so what American Initiatives did with putting together RIG was give us actually the empirical evidence to point to how there is a playbook on the other side and ways in which that has been used. Prior to the pandemic, Mac and Tim and I had been across the country in various panel discussions and et cetera, and doing the same as young folks say in these virtual streets to make sure that people are armed with this information. It is a reminder of how sacred and fragile the right to vote is. And so we've been promoting it every opportunity that I get to be on one of these panels, not for the sake of me being on a panel, but for the sake of me telling the real life story of what was happening in Missouri, and it's still happening. My organization is involved in a lawsuit right now with the Secretary of State. We're plaintiffs because there continues to be an effort to suppress votes, particularly of Black folk. We do faith-based organizing, so with churches, and I still believe that the church is the most effective way. We get an audience every week. The most effective way to get out the word in and beyond our community about why voting is important and all of the efforts that are against us.
You know, they could say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and we know that there are people who are watching this broadcast. We have been made available, thanks to the generosity of Mr. Heller. We have the full film that's being able to be shared. However, we're going to show a brief clip. We're getting that ready in the background, but whilst we're getting that clip ready, you know, we watched the debate yesterday. And as we're getting that clip ready, let's just go around the room. And what did we see in the debate yesterday as opposed to, well, whatever that was in the first debate? So let's just have a brief discussion about that as we get this clip ready. Anyone want to jump in?
Well, I'll be the first to say I couldn't sit through the whole debate. It was too difficult. I was up, I was walking. If I didn't, if I had more money, I would have destroyed my television, but I don't want to replace it. What we saw in the debate is how devious leadership can be. I think I saw the personification of the playbook and the elusiveness of not answering anything truthfully. And what I really felt in that debate is that it emphasized the urgency of us not taking this lightly. And I don't know how anybody could sit through that whole debate in one place. It was awful. And you saw how, and I think what's the delusion is that this could be a reasonable person, that you could actually lie and know people knew you were lying and continue to lie and expect them to believe you. So not only was the debate, John, but I looked at the group that gathered after, the undecided voters in North Carolina. I thank God they were better than the undecided voters at the last one. They did begin to see it, but what I saw in that debate was how far we have to go as a nation to realize the promise that we have made. And I saw the need for us as a church, and Reverend Gould is correct, we are the place, but we are taking for granted the bully pulpit we have to make a difference. And we must not ever be satisfied with where we are now. From this moment forward, we have to be vigilant about making sure we can turn this ship around.
So, any other takers on what we saw yesterday? Well, we could at least hear because they had a mute button. Dr. Gould?
Yeah, they didn't really use the mute button, but what I saw, I concur with Sister Jackie. It is the manifestation of evil. This kind of racist rhetoric did not start with the current president. He's just a manifestation. He's fruit on the tree. He amplifies the words that some of our next door neighbors wish they could say. And he is evidence. I mean, he started planning to run for presidency in 2000, at least when he initially articulated that. And so it is evidence again of this playbook that has been in play. But I think in this case, the Republicans even got more than they actually bargained for with this one. I saw the necessity. I heard the necessity of us understanding, in the words of Dr. King, the urgency of now like never before. The urgency of Black folk, and particularly, I'm not sure what communities he has helped. It has not been one that I have ever lived in. I saw the urgency of Black folk, particularly Black church folk, Black activists, anybody that cares about folk who look like us, to actually be vigilant. And what I'm concerned about is not just what happens on November 3rd, but what will happen beyond November 3rd. And so we have to be ready. Because they are ready. We have to be ready. And we have to be ready even potentially for another civil war. And this, I'm not fear mongering. This is real. So that's what I saw and that's what I heard. And it is people of faith that stand in the face of evil as fearless agents of God, And so we're the ones that need to be ready to be on the front lines, not just preaching and teaching. That's where it starts. But we have to really be ready to put something at risk, and put our bodies on the line.
Great. So I'm told the clip is ready. So before we go to the clip, Mr. Heller, do you have any thoughts before we the last night's debate, before we go to the clip?
I agree with my two colleagues. The current president didn't think all this up. It existed before he showed up, and he just got on a moving bus. So we should not kid ourselves that once he's gone, this problem's going to disappear. Absolutely. This is going to take committed work. Second thing I would say is that we have institution rebuilding to do in this country, because there's been an effort to discredit institutions of honesty and integrity across our country. And we need to work together to rebuild those. And the AME Church as an institution is at the forefront of that repair.
All right, so our clip is ready, and I believe this is the Fraudbusters clip. So we're going to watch this brief snippet from the Rig documentary as our tech team pulls it up.
If you care about vote fraud, gentlemen, we're fighting it. We could use your help. Hey, if you care about vote fraud, we're fighting it. We could use your help. If you care about vote fraud, gentlemen, we're fighting it. We could use your help. Thank you.
I know a girl who votes 8 times and has $1 million in the bank and is on food stamps and gets everything for free, including college.
How do you know she votes 8 times?
Because we know her. She does.
Would you call me later? Before I launched the Voter Integrity Project, I was a military officer, retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. I became worried that this is a fragile system that depends on people being fair and honest. If you're worried about vote fraud, here's how we're fighting it tomorrow. We could use your help. They're hiding something, and we're on to them. And that's the only question. It's not how many, we know they're doing it. The question is, how big a deal is it? Are they really trying to steal the entire nation?
And a lot of people are going through life with blinders on, or like I used to tell people, it's called the toilet paper tube syndrome. You got toilet paper tubes in front of your eyes, and all you see is that little bit of world right out in front of you through the toilet paper tubes. You don't see what all's going on out here. So if you're looking right here and you're not looking for voter fraud, you won't see voter fraud.
My name is Michael Evan Hires. I'm a 100% disabled veteran. I'm not married. I have the time, I have the skills, and have the desire to make sure that every American vote is legally cast.
The Voting Integrity Project is interesting. They've always had a bit of a gadfly, renegade, vigilante voter fraud, crusaders. They claimed that thousands of non-citizens were voting in the state, where they would challenge voters at county boards of elections, and then they couldn't prove that really any of those were true.
It's about time we turned the lights on in the kitchen and started cleaning the cockroaches out of here.
Is there anyone in the audience today who received a notice that if they wish their name not to be removed from the voter rolls, they should be present? Stand up then and give us your name, please.
Randy Burkhead.
Okay, sir. John.
Well, North Carolina has a provision where a citizen can challenge the right of another citizen to vote. It's been on the books forever. Who else is going to know who's registered to vote unless another citizen does it?
Some of the laws that wind up being discriminatory today had discriminatory intent when they were first written in the early 1900s as part of the Jim Crow laws. For example, voter purging laws to cleanse the rolls.
And this was typically used in the Jim Crow era by whites who were trying to prevent newly enfranchised African Americans from having access to the ballot box.
Michael's methodology involves finding voters that the state identified as inactive.
These people have missed 2 federal elections, so they were listed as inactive,
And I started sending letters to these inactive voters on the Cumberland County voter rolls.
The ones that came back marked by the post office as undeliverable are considered evidence that the voter no longer resides at that address. And my challenge to those voters.
What the letter essentially says to purely maintain my voter registration as it is currently today. Whoever this guy is has challenged my right to vote. The only way to defend your registration was to go in person. The process heavily favors the person doing the challenging. Not everybody is going to get a letter or have the time to defend it.
What do you want this board to know concerning your place of residence?
My primary place of residence is the address on my voter registration.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the challenge to Ms. Burkett be dismissed.
Second. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. The challenge against you is dismissed. Your voter registration remains.
Now let's move on to Mr. John Lamont McKeithen Jr.
Some people have the knack of spotting anomalies. It's kind of like seeing a lump of coal in a bale of cotton. It'll just pop right out at you.
So let me just ask you, what do you want this board to know concerning your place of residence?
I do live and have lived at 7790 Stony Point Road.
It said 7790.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this says 7770.
Is there a possibility that people got struck from the rolls mistakenly because the post office did not appropriately deliver the mailings to them? There is a small possibility on that.
Challenges shall not be made indiscriminately.
I love the vote. It was instilled in us to vote. My grandma raised me up and my sister up to vote. You know, when we turned 18, that was all right. The address when I registered was 7660 Bridgewood Circle.
I'm gonna have you go and stand in that line so they can update you.
Okay.
All right. Next voter, please.
I need to make sure I got an O until
Is this your address?
She told me I could not vote at all because I got to re-register because I'm nowhere in that system. They're not making it easy at all. It's tiresome. Yeah. When I found out that I was purged off the rolls, I was highly upset about it because like I said, I grew up seeing my family vote. I know it's my God-given right today to vote, and I want to vote.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give concerning this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All the evidence shows that when someone is purged from the rolls, it's extremely unlikely that they're going to re-register. It's hard to get them to re-register. And I worry that it will diminish the will to participate in the political process.
And the danger is if states use unreliable information to take voters off the rolls, and if they do not give voters adequate notice and an opportunity to contest their removal, then we can have a situation where hundreds or even thousands of legitimate voters are being taken off of the rolls without their knowledge.
Good morning. Persons were engaging in an attempt to get voters purged, especially African Americans. We are fighting this. We believe and we hope that the courts will agree with us and we will have an immediate temporary restraining order.
Reverend Barber, that guy's made a name for himself. I congratulate him on a well-funded. He has a lot of out-of-state funding money, and he knows how to play that race card better than anybody I've seen. And really, since the heyday of Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, he has played that race card so well.
The NAACP filed a voter suppression lawsuit against the North Carolina Board of Elections, and today they won that case with a federal judge declaring that all voters purged from the voting rolls must be reinstated.
The NAACP in North Carolina, they filed a lawsuit in federal court, and actually they went judge shopping. They found a black female judge that they could influence emotionally, in my opinion, and not so humble opinion at that.
Those of us who are the descendants of people who had their cars blown up outside of churches right here in North Carolina when they were inside the church organizing for voting rights. When you come from that kind of lineage, you're not going to allow some loudmouth bigot to intimidate you.
The courts have said, you can't do any of this kind of stuff in the last 90 days. They're going to put all these names back on the roll. We had a guy who worked for 2 years and got over 6,000 names removed in Cumberland County.
And they claimed that we were targeting blacks. I would be glad to get drug into federal court because that will give me the opportunity to expose the problems that we have in this state. I get 3 hots and a cot and full medical care if I go to jail. Except how are you going to put me in jail for following the law?
It's a Tuesday morning, but not just any Tuesday morning, Election Day.
Good morning, America. Election Day 2016.
Election Day officially starts right now.
So who did you vote for?
Tough decision.
If Hillary wins, I'm done probably. I don't know what will happen, but it scares the crap out of me because if she wins, I'm afraid I'll be hunted down like a dog.
Michael Evan Hires.
You could just verify that your address and information is correct. You can just sign at the bottom.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Morning. My name's Michael Hires.
Michael Hires. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, you may not think so when you go back and research my name, but I'm the fellow that's been filing the voter challenges. Let's face it, there are unscrupulous people out there, and they could go to the polls and impersonate somebody. I'll tell you what,
It's a pleasure.
if I could get more people of all, I don't hate to say race because we're all the human race,
Yes.
but more ethnic backgrounds involved in this, that way people wouldn't be taking pot shots at me. The NAACP is hot as a pistol at me right now, claiming I'm suppressing the black vote.
Well, I think you would.
They're accusing me of targeting minorities.
Okay.
They're trying to throw mud on the wall and trying to get it to stick.
Really.
But if you're interested in getting involved, look up voterintegrityproject.com.
I will remember that. Right now, I have to go on late for work.
Okay. Well, have a good day.
What we're going to try and do is have data collectors sitting there passively collecting data on license plate numbers, see if we can figure out which people, if any, are going from voting location to voting location. The illegitimate reason would be if someone is what we call a serial voter and going from location A to B to C, using a different name at each one. And what we want to know is how prevalent is this?
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Emergency, call me.
Can I talk about one state that's going to come up at 7 o'clock that we
So what we could do is call the State Board of Elections and have them intervene. But I just called somebody with an undercover camera. The bottom line is we're trying to collect evidence of voter impersonation fraud. This is what I call criminal enterprise level vote fraud. You see any vote fraud?
Not yet.
I got to take this. Hey, Jam.
Have you seen any fraud, heard of any fraud?
No, we have not. No, with only 6 data collectors, the odds of getting someone who showed up at 2 locations are slim and none.
What would you say to Jay Delancey and Mike Hires?
Basically, if you want to challenge me, please contact me first. A challenge is a challenge, and if I challenge you to a chess match, I need you to play with me. At least come back. Show me what you got. So
Until we can say, without doubt, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Until that means exactly what it says, we are still
working toward becoming a more perfect union.
Is worth 1,000 words. And what we just saw was, and there are 50 more minutes of this across 4 states in this documentary. So I have to ask, and I want to ask the panel, you all are on the front lines. This was done around the 2016, 2018 elections. What have we done to prepare for 2020, given the fact that voter intimidation and suppression is not something in the air? It is something that is real and going on right now. What are we doing right now? What can we do to protect the democratic right to vote in this election? And we'll start with Dr. Gould and then work our way around.
Great question. And certainly in Missouri and across the nation, I am a part of Faith in Action, the largest faith-based grassroots org in the country. They've been doing this for about 40 years. And so we are working diligently to give congregations, particularly, the tools that they need to actually engage at the polls. We've prepared people with education. In the state of Missouri, we have election chaplains, and not chaplain in the sense that you think of it, although following the root word of chaplaincy, we are custodians of the vote. And so we had a training yesterday, a statewide training yesterday, 2 more coming up next week, that will prepare people to be at the polls, to be not just a ministry of presence, but also a ministry of protection, possibly of voters, and certainly of the right to vote. We are working with the Voter Protection Coalition. It is a nationwide organization. Obviously, in our context, we're working with the Missouri one. We have some clergy that are trained as poll monitors. Our election chaplains were trained in de-escalation. Of course, they'll give out PPE and water and snacks, but they're also trained to de-escalate situations, particularly if there is danger at the polls, if there is the kind of intimidation that we expect. They might be more prevalent in some of the battleground states, but we are prepared, because in an era when people are prepared to kidnap a sitting governor, you can expect anything to happen on and after Election Day. And so that's kind of what we're doing in brevity. We have toolkits that we're sending out to congregations across the country, but I'll give my colleagues a chance to answer.
Mr. Heller, it's interesting what you said, Reverend Gould, because I study comparative politics. And so we're used to voter intimidation in, say, ballot boxes in Jamaica or ballot boxes in Brazil. But to hear in the United States that president has called for armed guards to go to polling places, and that we need to make sure that we're prepared for people with guns looking at you to not to help you, but this is like this is not the United States we've come to expect. Mr. Heller, what are some things that are being done to better prepare us for 2020?
I think the one I'd like to talk about, this is a big, long answer that all 3 of us will deliver pieces of. I'm focused on getting people's ballots to count. So you vote by mail, and your state, let's say, has a requirement of 2 witnesses for your ballot, or a requirement of notarization. I mean, I can't tell you how many barriers are being thrown up in an attempt to squelch vote by mail. What I'm focused on is what we call curing the ballot. The ballot arrives at the Board of Elections, and somebody at the Board of Elections alleges that it is defective and should not be counted because it wasn't properly witnessed, or you didn't put the inside envelope inside the outside, whatever, or there's not a right signature, whatever it is. we have the opportunity now, and until, depending on the state, a couple of days after Election Day, to cure that defect. And that means first identifying that the Board of Elections hasn't accepted the ballot, and then second, contacting the voter and saying, hey, let's work together to fix this. So there are a number of organizations that are working to do that. And I'm going to ask my colleague, Kevin Baines, to put in the chat some of the organizations and how you can contact them to get involved in ballot curing. This is right at the end of the assembly line of voting, where the car is about to be rolled off and the driver get in and drive it away. And if we don't cure the ballot, it won't count. And so that's what I'm focused on. And thousands of people around the country are helping voters get this done.
You know, there was a New York Times article, I think on the 21st, talking about signatures. And like they said about 5 different ways your vote may not count if you vote on mail. They looked at signatures. They looked at, did you seal the ballot or not seal the ballot? All these different rules. And I know it's mind-boggling to think that every state, every jurisdiction has their own rules, and we have to be cognizant of that. This Dupont-Walker, you are the chair of the Amy Wheeler Initiative, and we've said this over and over again, but to those who are on this call, AMEs or not AMEs, what resources have we already put in place to protect the rights to vote, not only today on October 23rd, but those who are going to be there November 3rd, and even while the counting goes on, hopefully ending on November 3rd, but the count may go on for several days more. What are we doing as a connectional church right now? Tell us.
To everybody who is here, you are now deputized to go and make that difference. What we have in place is for you to be clear that you are now a captain, you're a class leader, you are whoever you need to be to identify at least 10 people that you are going to monitor and coach and stay with until they give you evidence that they have voted. And give that evidence by sending you a picture on these smartphones that we all have, or iPads, or whatever we have, that can happen. But more than anything else, we have the AMEV Alert Toolkit that gives you the way to organize in your church. Let's say your pastor says there's too much going on now in this COVID situation. You take this toolkit and get a few people in your church and your community to make it happen. But what's important, and what we've heard from our other two colleagues on this call, is we are all networking. So AMEV Alert is working with the voter protection, is working with vote.org, is working with Black Church Action Fund, is working with the Brennan Center, is working with Lawyers and Scholars. We understand at this point that the partnership makes the difference, so we can spread that out. Curing the vote is something Mac is talking about. I want to make sure today that we put that information out everywhere, because we have no idea the things that are going to happen. For example, we're here in California, La La Land, things don't happen. Voter suppression is down in the South and on the East Coast. Guess what? The Republican Party put out their own version of ballot boxes. We have official ballot boxes to put your ballots in. They put their own ballot boxes out. Had nothing to do with the official ballot boxes. And that has happened here. Guess what? The other night, someone set a ballot box on fire. So we are saying, if you see something, say something to call it in. Yes, John, we heard from several people who are working in voter registrars' offices that a number of ballots are coming in that are not signed. So today, this providential that Mac is talking about, curing the ballot. So we can say to those people working in those voter registrars' office, you are the spook who's sitting at the door. What you see, you got to say something so we can actually cure that. People don't like to think about the spook who sat by the door, but it means you're in a place at a time where God has placed you to do something that needs to be done. And so for us coming together on a regular basis, our Episcopal districts, our divisions are working. They have plans. We have declared that we're going to mobilize at least 1.5 million people to the poll, but it has to be done with our arms linked and together. We're working, for example, with George Floyd's childhood friend. They've been so motivated by what happened to George Floyd and the insensitivity and the illegality and the evil that they've come together, and they call themselves Chumps 88. And they're going all around the Houston area, his home, trying to get it done. Whatever motivates you to get something done, do it. You don't need permission. You have it. But let me just put this in context. I'm a native of Florida. Every controversial presidential election in this country has included the state of Florida. People like to think Florida is not like Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, but the state of Florida. We grew up kind of a joke that the ballots were always missing in Dade County in Miami. There was always election day, some ballot boxes missing. This mischief did not just start. We have thought this is America, as John said, this can't happen in America. It has been happening here. When we look back at history, we have found a way to delude ourselves that this country is primarily different. But guess what? It's our watch now. It's time for us to stop the madness. So from this point on, past November 3rd, because on November 4th, not only are we watching the ballots, but we're getting ready for the election 2 years hence. We have to right this ship. Get rid of those rules from 1901 that were there to suppress the vote, that we left when we had the power in the legislature to take out of the voting rules in the county where we sit. Become those public servants. We're saying to everyone who is AME, you have a legacy to protect, and you can't not do this. And if you're not AME yet, come with us. We want to get this done. And then we're linking arms with everybody to make this happen. So yes, AME V Alert is there to keep the fire burning, to keep nudging, to keep saying to anybody who will listen, y'all, it's our watch. We got to get this.
Yes, we know it's our watch. And we'll keep the AME V Alert link posted. But back to this impressive documentary, Rigged. Now, Mr. Heller, you talked about we are going to show the full documentary this evening, and we will bring our panelists back for discussion afterwards. But Mr. Heller and Dr. Gould, walk me through some of the filming process, and all specifically, how did you select the sites you were voting on, and also how did we end up with Dr. Gould? And I know we don't have her clip here, but she will be in the full film, which is why we want y'all to come back at 6 p.m. Eastern to see our AME sister in the film. But just talk a little bit about the filming process, and also Dr. Gould, when we chat with you about being filmed, just like, because the documentary filming is a very intimate process. I know there are things that are on the cutting floor and whatnot. So let's hear about this process and how the selection went through.
Well, Dr. Gould is not just in the film, she's the star of the film. And we're very proud to have her inspirational voice prominent in the film. Some of the best passages in the film are of her. We started this early in 2016, and the question was, where is this going to happen? So that's a little tricky to figure out where you're going to go. And so inevitably, you start looking at 10 or 12 states and then begin to focus down. And we feature, as you mentioned, Mr. Thomas, 4 states prominently in the film, but we filmed in probably 4 more. We also filmed a lot of footage in Georgia. We have a little bit of Kansas, which is in the film. We filmed in Pennsylvania, but you can't tell 30 stories. You got to focus and get people to take it from there. One thing I'll mention that was important to us, it's easy to film this film in Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, but we were careful to include Wisconsin in our film in a prominent place, because voter suppression may have once been primarily centered in the former states of the Confederacy. That is no longer true. As Sister Jackie just said, we see things popping up in, of all places, California, but my home state of Ohio, my grandfather's home state of Wisconsin, this is happening. Pennsylvania, the president is encouraging it, and there's some stuff in the paper today about voter intimidation in Pennsylvania. So it was a target-rich environment, but we had to focus and we had to bring it back. The same way there were many places we could film, there were many things we could film. In other words, we've got the purge, we've got voter intimidation, we've got gerrymandering, we've got this, we've got that. But all the stories we didn't film. We didn't film a segment, which we wanted very much to do, and you can't do everything, on felon disenfranchisement, the practice, again, originating in the Jim Crow South, of saying that if you ever committed a felony and were convicted, then you can never vote. Slowly but surely, we're getting rid of that in this country, but not completely in Florida, where over 1 million people on this election are still disenfranchised. We also, there are new constraints, deliberate constraints on registration drives, especially in Texas, Ohio. They tried it in Tennessee and it was struck down. But all these constraints about you need to register to be a canvasser, you need to undergo training, you can do it in this county but not in that county. All these things to make it more difficult and more dangerous to do what all of us grew up doing, which is standing in a shopping mall or going around a neighborhood door to door, registering people to vote. That's very difficult right now in the state of Texas. And that's deliberately so. So we couldn't cover everything, but we did our best. And I think people can look at our film on the one hand and open their newspaper today on the other and say, these are not disconnected, merely administrative events. This is a pattern. This is a plan. This is a playbook.
Dr. Gould, what was the experience like being filmed? And walk us through some of how you felt just as they shared your experience in Missouri.
Yeah, it was actually a little overwhelming. I was very humbled when I was contacted. I was just doing what I do, right? My work has always been at the intersection of faith and politics. In the film, you'll learn about my mother's experience in Selma. And so they followed me for weeks for my 5 minutes of fame. Part of the film took place in Wayman AME Church in Lewis, which is an anchor church for my organization as well as my home church. They were gracious enough to allow us to film part of it there on multiple days. What hit the floor was a Sunday when I was preaching about voting at my home church doing annual conference. God, they followed me. So you talk about being intimate with the documentary. My son had just moved back to St. Louis and was actually volunteering for my organization, running some of our voter work there. And it was the first time that my son and I got to vote together, because the first time he voted, he was away at school at Morris Brown College. And all the other times he lived in Atlanta that whole time. And so the film crew was embedded in my car all day on election day, all day on election day. So from the polls, they were with my son and I when we ate breakfast. I mean, it was just a long day. They were, in the Capitol when I was in the Capitol on the opening of our legislative session. And so it was actually months, wasn't even weeks. And so it was a little invasive, but I was actually happy and humbled to participate, particularly to share my mother's story. Dr. William Barber talks about inheriting a mantle. I think I inherited not just being a child, but also from my mother's work. And so I feel very blessed and very grateful, particularly because some of it was filmed in church fellowship halls. And our work in Missouri is dependent upon the church. In 2018, and this is after the film, but in 2018, we ran the second largest grassroots voter initiative in the state of Missouri. And we were able to change history by being able to get the prosecutor in St. Louis County replaced by a young Black man. And so, and that work was done primarily in St. Peter AME Church and Wayman AME Church, where they opened the doors and allowed us to have phone banks. So here we are, and still trying to not make history change the course of history.
And speaking of which, I want to bring us, we're about to, Jackie is saying something. Were you trying to speak?
I am. I'm muted.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now for your minute. Go ahead.
What I want to say is that there are people like Reverend Gould who are called to do this. And unfortunately, our church does not recognize this as an assignment that someone gets from the bishop as we get appointments. I believe that when you're in the AME church, this is a part of your calling. But some people are called uniquely to do this. And if nothing else, this documentary shows what it takes to do this. It is as important, if not more important, to the quality of life than anything we do just going in and out of a worship setting. This is true worship where you're actually engaging with and for the people, empowering the people, bringing the scripture alive, being the sermon that somebody sees. And I just hope that out of this dialogue today and looking at Riggs, that the people who have this calling will then come forth and do what they're called to do. No matter how many toolkits we put out there, no matter how many discussions we have, how many training sessions, and we love doing this because we think it inspires. I promise you that this is your calling. God is going to give you everything you need to do this. And we will make that integral difference that has to be made to turn this around. And thank you, Reverend Gould, just you sharing it, because I too come from that legacy. My father was a leader in the bus boycott nobody knows about in Tallahassee. So at age 9, I was, in fact, learning how to deal with this evil and what happens with the Ku Klux Klan and burning crosses. For all of us, no matter what our experience is now with Black Lives Matter or the history, we're here to cover the young people now as they will cover it then. But this is what we're called to do in African Methodism. We must do this.
You know, we've been doing these dialogues, Ms. Dupont-Walker, and for everyone, and I know you get passionate. I always enjoy being around Ms. Dupont-Walker, talking about voting. If you ever want to rile her up, just say voting. But in all seriousness, as the AME Church, we know part of our mission and our calling is the social justice liberation of all peoples. So we're doing this for all people. We're just not here for Black folk. We're just not here for those who look like us. We're here for all people to be liberated. And, you know, going off that point, I'd like to lead us to our final commentary. You know, we've talked a lot about this election that is going to change the focus of this country. We are clear that the 2020 election will go down in history as almost as pivotal as the 2016 election that set us down this course. So when we wake up on November the 4th, whether the counting is done or not, the election may still be going on, but definitely on January 21st, we will have a different administration. It could be the same administration with new faces or a totally different administration. Regardless of what happens on January 21st, what do we need to be doing to protect and secure our democracy going forward? Because as we've said, one thing today, voting does not stop. There are elections every 2 years. We can't keep coming back, waking up. We're woke now. How do we stay woke and working? And what do we need to do going forward? So we'll start with Mr. Heller and we'll work our way to Ms. Dupont-Walker and then Dr. Gould.
I'll throw out one, which is here's what's coming up on the horizon, which is redistricting. And it's a very powerful weapon when used for good or evil. And based on the votes for state legislators 10 days from today, the legislatures will create the new districting for Congress, for state houses that will last for 10 years. And I can guarantee you that the bad guys have already figured out what they want to do. And so the good side of things needs to be on that issue the day after this election to make sure that all votes count and that this is not yet another contortion of a small group of people trying to control the country through shrewdness and leverage. So keep gerrymandering and redistricting right in front of your eyes once we're past this election.
2 words, down ballots. We know that voting down ballot is important. A few weeks ago, we brought on 5 state legislators who are AMEs, and they talked about the importance of state legislature work. So definitely we have to pay attention to our states. Dr. Gould.
Yes, as Max said, the redistricting, the day to start planning for the next election, I don't say it's the next day. I always advise people to get 3 days rest, get some rest, but it's the next week. And when you start planning for what will happen in your state, I chair a statewide table, and we are already we've been talking about since this summer, the things that we are going to be pushing forward in 2022. I advise people to be a part of some community organizing group because community organizing gives you the tools that you need so that you can engage with campaigns, whether you're a state like Missouri with a super legislative body that all we can do is have ballot initiatives. We have what now stands to be the most restrictive redistricting legislation in the country. But it's not going to pass because we have been organizing and working to make sure that people do say no on 3 in Missouri. But get organized, organize congregations, congregations linked with other organizations, as Sister Jackie said. And this is not, I know as AMEs, we love to work by ourselves, but it takes more than us. Figure out in your state, in your city, how many people it takes to actually move a piece of legislation. In Missouri, we know that it takes 1.45 million people. My organization can't do that, so we have to connect with a lot of other organizations. Do what is necessary. It might be people that you might not agree with on all of their stances, but can you agree that democracy is worth saving? And start now, and that down ballot really does make a difference. And let's start grooming candidates. We don't talk about that a lot. What are the kinds of people that you would like to see in these seats?
You know, one of the things that I think I'm glad you brought up is our ecumenical ties, our ties across the aisle. The Black Church Action Fund and the PAC has been important. And so we also encourage you to look at Black Church PAC and Rocks.online. We've partnered for the first time with Kojic, the National Baptist, any Black church out there we have partnered with through the Black Church PAC to all of us work together to get our votes done. But also you talked about candidates. In a forum that Teresa Fry Brown did, she talked about the fact that we have to bring AME church candidates together. And I was going to Ms. Dupont-Walker, and I think she just popped out, but I'm sure she would have me tell you that we have to stay engaged. We have to stay mobilized. Go to amev-alert.org, and the election is only where our work begins. And I think did she come back? She's back. Good, so she can speak for herself. Ms. Dupont-Walker, the final word is yours before we go into our announcements.
You know, I want to say this to everybody on here, and Mac, you certainly have an opportunity to join us. We have the best civil rights, human rights advocacy organization in the world, and it's called the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Brother John, I will tell you, this is not the first time we have joined with. This is the first time we have absolutely made sure everyone knew we joined with. It is important to work in tandem, but the most important thing for us to know is that we have a social action component. Let's make sure it comes alive. It is set up to operate all the way to the local church. And I said there are 2 things. I happen to serve on the Redistricting Commission for the city of Los Angeles. There are places in the U.S. now where it's not just the elected officials drawing lines, but you in the audience can absolutely be a part of drawing the lines. Find out if that's happening in your area. Go and ask whoever is appointing if you can be appointed to serve on the line. Spend the time making sure you have credible lines drawn that impact everything. Let us not forget that at the turn of the 19th century, 9 out of every 10 persons of African descent claimed to be a member of the AME Church. Why? Not because we were so wonderful, which we are, but because we were standing in the places where the voice needed to be heard for all the people. That's what we must do. We must stand not just at press conferences. We must be in the meetings when policy is being tweaked, when decisions are being made that are not in the interest of our best communities. We must be those voices and be present. But as one thing that is important, and I've started to push this out, we must have a boot camp for people who are getting prepared for public service. Not everybody will have a parent, a grandparent, a mentor to help them. Somebody will just feel in their gut that they need to do this, and they need to have a place to come where they can understand what it means to be a public servant. not just to be present at the banquets and to send certificates, but to do the hardcore work of ensuring that this nation reaches its destiny. So I give to you the African Methodist Episcopal Church that works in coalition with everybody. And wherever you find yourself, make yourself a part of bringing that network and coalition together. And we are here to help the Social Action Commission of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. We are part of the larger help. And Mac, we'll take your membership any day now. You don't even have to go to church. You can join right here.
With those stirring words, I'd like to thank all three of you for being with us today. We, again, for those of you watching, the full movie of Rigged, we will be sharing this evening at 6 p.m. Eastern. It will be streamed live on the AME Church page, the Christian Recorder, as well as the AME Church Publishing House. And we will also direct you to that website. Afterwards, there will be another roundtable, which we will talk about the film. There is a lot in that hour, things that you will think you will never believe, in a good way and a not so good way. So again, we encourage you, come back at 6 p.m. Eastern to watch this film. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing, I'm sorry, is it 7? Was it 7 p.m. or 6 p.m.? I just made it 6 p.m., but I think it was supposed to be 7 p.m. It's 7 p.m. Eastern. 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm in 3 different time zones. I'm sorry. 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. So come back at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific to watch this great film. And we will have a roundtable afterwards. Please come back and watch. You will be glad you spent that hour. Your eyes will be opened about what is really going on in our country. And it's not hyperbole, it's the truth. We also have a few announcements going forth that I would like to do at this time. So first and foremost, we have been doing this dialogue series, and we have a special dialogue coming up Monday, and I'm sure Dr. Gould and Ms. Dupont-Walker will get a kick out of this. Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, the chairwoman of the House Committee on the Special House Committee on Administration, dealing with elections, as well as the former president of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated nationally, as well as Antoine Seawright, will be having a dialogue on Monday. That will be October the 26th at 11 a.m. You don't want to miss that. Also, we will be having a dialogue on that Tuesday in Church, California, and Sylvester Beeman on First from Bethel, Wilmington, to talk about the candidates. They know them well, and we'll have the information for you as we go. Also, as always, as the editor, it's been a privilege to share these dialogues, but we encourage you to support our periodical. You can buy a subscription for $36 a year to the world's oldest periodical, published by people of African descent. This is your paper. Support your paper. Support us as we continue to give you journalism from the AME point of view. You can visit our website, www.thechristianrecorder.com, $36 a year. Read us online, read us in print. You'll be glad you did. Also, we encourage you to support our publisher, the AME Church Publishing House, for your church, school, and worship needs. Their featured product is the Empowerment Syllabus. We just did an interview yesterday with Stephanie Lynn Young, who is not only the daughter of the late Senior Bishop McKinley Young, but the director of special marketing for When We All Vote. Content like that will be in the Empowerment Syllabus. We are doing this through the publishing house. The publisher is doing this to educate and give you the tools you need to continue this great work in your congregations. Also, we recognize our sponsors because someone has to pay for the lights. We are thankful for Reverend Dr. Marvin C. Zanders for Bishop 2021. And we are also thankful for the sponsorship of Reverend Dr. Sylvester Beeman for Bishop 2021. We will now present to you our closing public service announcement on voting by Bishop Ann Henning Byfield, the Bishop of the 60th Episcopal District.
I am Bishop Ann Henning Byfield, Bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the 16th Episcopal District. Voting is power, and collective voting is unity and strength. Our collective votes are needed to change the conditions of women and children, in this country. We are the guardians of the faith, the keeper of the village peace, and the giver of life to humanity. We need the spirit of our mothers and our grandmothers to change and protect the lives of our children and those yet unborn. Please join with us and let's get the job done collectively. Let's work with AMEV Alert and get all voters to the polls to vote on November the 3rd. It's our time. It's our watch. It's our lives. Vote and get others to vote. Thank you.
Again, thank you for watching. Come back at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific to watch the movie Rigged. You'll be glad you did. Thank you. We look forward to welcoming you back. God bless you.